Hello, everyone. Today we are taking another look at the 2028 Electoral College map with AOC versus JD Vance. Hit the like button and subscribe if you want more content just like this, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss another video like this one. Looking at this matchup, it's really interesting because, of course, Donald Trump won the 2024 election with 312 electoral college votes to Harris's 226. And there are a lot of moving parts with this, model per se, with this matchup. There are a lot of moving parts to this one. If we look at the full crosstabs for this general election, well, you'll notice if we actually scroll down here, what's really interesting is you'll actually see that white voters in general swing a lot more Republican in this one compared to the other two matchups. And maybe that it's because she's a female. Maybe it's because she's viewed as even more left than some of the other candidates. Like, it's always possible, but you clearly see that, like, she performs way worse with the white vote than the other Democrats do in this matchup, but she does the best amongst the black voters, and Vance is only getting 16% of the black vote as opposed to the other two matchups. And believe it or not, this is actually lower than Donald Trump's share from 2024. I believe he got like 18% or like 15%, somewhere around that range. So it's similar to Trump's performance. She's still obviously underperforming Harris with the black vote by a lot, but not nearly as much as some of the other candidates are. So that's something interesting to take into account there. But looking at this, we can also see with young voters, she does significantly better. Even 30 to 39-year-olds, she does a lot better amongst those voters. But you can see older voters are much more Republican in this matchup. So you kind of have like a similar electorate to 2020 in some ways. With this one, like, it's kind of a combination of like some 2020 voters and 2024 voters with some new voters kind of coming into the mix. What you'll see, though, however, is kind of interesting. She actually does better amongst the non-college voters than even some of the other Republicans do. But then Vance does better amongst college and post-grad voters than the other two nominees, the other two Democrats. He does better against AOC with that group. So it's kind of an interesting combination of an electorate. And when you look at the undecided voters for this, you can clearly see a lot of them are independents. A lot of them, in general, are some Democrats are mostly undecided, but a decent amount of them are actually, you can clearly see here, a lot of them are the independent vote is what's really undecided here. And you'll actually see, looking at this, that when you look at this, it's a really, really big number of people that if we scroll all the way down here, if we look at Donald Trump's favorable rating, a lot of them have a neutral opinion of the incumbent president. A lot of them are some people who disapprove, but a significant amount of them are people that are actually in the neutral category, which isn't really good. If when you really look at that, it's not really a good thing that is the case, that some of them are undecided like this for the most part. And then again, when we look at, the matchup, you can clearly see that the electorate in this one is a little bit funny. When you actually look here, Vance actually does really good amongst males. He wins them by about 11 points. And then with female voters, she's actually only getting about, when you look here, she's only getting, roughly give or take, she's winning this by like 4 points. That's it. She's only winning female voters by 4 points in this matchup. So that's also something to take into consideration. But a lot of them that are undecided tend to be a lot more female voters are the ones that are actually undecided compared to men. So that's also something to consider. This matchup could always get better for AOC. So that's something to take into account, more likely than somebody like Vance. But when we look at this matchup, I mean, just the safe Republican states as usual, a lot of the Great Plains states, the southern states, as well as like, South Carolina, Alaska, and Nebraska's at-large vote is in the safe Republican column. If we look here, Iowa, Ohio, Texas, and Florida are also all in the safe Republican column here, despite, her actually gaining with Hispanic voters in this matchup. She does about a pretty decent amount better with Hispanic voters in this hypothetical matchup than Trump did against Harris. But the black vote also shifts Republican and the white vote shifts Republican. So you have a little bit of a weird realignment where the Hispanic vote kind of shifts back Democrat, but white and black voters actually kind of shift Republican. So that's something quite interesting to notice. I mean, in Texas, you only have like a very narrow shift to the right, like only a point. And this is mostly because Vance actually does better amongst some of the post grad suburban voters compared to the other two nominees. And so he actually offsets the losses with some Hispanic and white voters with some of the post grad shifts and some of the, suburban voters actually shifting back towards the Republicans. So that's kind of how he offsets the losses there. And even Florida, it's a 17-point win in this one. So he does like 4 points better in this matchup in Florida. You could even see it here. The state that actually shifts the most Republican is actually the state of New York in this matchup. And you clearly see the second most is Florida compared to the other states, of course. Multiple wars around the globe and central banks are turning to gold. Gold is the most in-demand safe haven asset among central banks. Demand for gold comes as central banks look to move away from the US dollar, and it is the only currency central banks are looking to reduce exposure to. The dollar has sunk into its lowest level in 3 years. The Citibank CEO warned sovereign wealth funds are diversifying more aggressively, and according to Nassim Taleb, gold is now the world's reserve currency. As of July 1st, gold is now classified as a Tier 1 full reserve asset. Forecasts for gold have now reached $6,000 to $7,000 an ounce. Silver and platinum have joined the commodity supercycle that has many years left. Call the proud Americans of Patriot Gold Group today before it's too late. Mention On Point Politics and you'll get best-in-class service from Patriots protecting Patriots. Patriot Gold has the no fee for life IRA where your IRA or 401k can be in physical gold and silver, and you may be eligible for the no fee for IRA on qualifying rollovers. Call 1-888-795-9430 for a free investor guide today. Patriot Gold Group is a Consumer Affairs top-rated gold IRA dealer 9 years in a row. Call 1-888-795-9430. And for the Democrat safe states, you have Washington, Oregon, California. They all shift Republican. You can actually see, unlike most matchups, Washington and Oregon actually shift Republican by a couple points, and this is because Vance does better amongst post-grad and college-educated voters in this matchup than he would against the other two candidates being Buttigieg or Newsom, for example. So he actually performs better in these states as well. Hawaii, he does just a tiny bit better. It's really not much of a better performance. It's like literally not even, he actually does slightly worse, believe it or not. It's a 0.1 percentage point shift to the left. So that's pretty interesting. And then we see here, for example, looking at, Maryland, DC, Massachusetts, and Vermont, as well as Maine's 1st congressional district. Those are all in the safe Democratic column. And Connecticut's actually safe Democrat. It only shifts like barely to the right. It actually only shifts like half a point Republican in this matchup. So Connecticut also doesn't really move anywhere for the most part. Looking at the likely Republican states on the map, Arizona and Maine's 2nd congressional district are the only ones that fall in this likely categorization. Arizona was almost a likely state in 2024, but stayed in the upper lean column last cycle and now is in the likely category. And we even see here he wins it by 7.2%. Both candidates do better in terms of the raw vote share, I believe. I'm like almost positive that that is the case. Maybe, yeah. AOC actually does a couple thousand votes better than Harris in the state, but Vance improves from Trump by like 500,000 votes or even more than that. So that actually gives Vance a like 2-point shift in the state of Arizona, almost a 2-point shift in the state of Arizona. And Maine's 2nd, of course, is going to shift a little bit Republican, and the state shifts like a point to the right. So that is naturally going to shift the 2nd congressional district just slightly to the right of the 9-point win that it was back in 2024. It's probably a 9.2, 9.3 percentage point win in this one. Most of the shift in the state probably comes from Maine's first, if I had to guess. The likely Democratic states Colorado, New Mexico, Illinois, New York, Rhode Island is now in the likely Democrat column. It was not in that column before, but it drops just below that threshold there of 11.7%. It drops right below the 12-point column, as well as Delaware, believe it or not, actually shifts about 3 points to the right, given the losses with the black vote that AOC has. And obviously, looking at Nebraska's first, the state of Nebraska really barely moves at all. It moves like 0.1% to the left. So it's pretty much going to be here. And then if we actually look here, you'll even see that like New York actually shifts 4 points to the right. So that is the biggest shift there, is the state of New York. She actually does better than Harris, I believe so. We'll actually look at the vote share now. She actually does 100,000 votes worse than Harris did in the state. But Vance improves by like 300,000 in New York. So that gives him sort of an advantage in the state. For the most part, it kind of gives him a little bit of an advantage there. So that really moves the needle in New York. And it basically puts him at a really good position to make the state a swing state. Unfortunately, for him, because of the fact that you do have some, Hispanic voters moving left, some sort of young voters moving the opposite direction. It's not going to quite put it under the swing state category, but it is close enough where it is going to be a very bad sign for Democrats in the future. Looking at the lean Republican states, Georgia, North Carolina, Nevada, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania all fall in this lean Republican column, and that gives Vance 312 electoral college votes. On the map here, he does about 2 points better in Georgia. He does about a couple points better in North Carolina, 3 points or 2 points better in each state, believe it or not. Vance does worse in Georgia than Trump, but AOC just completely tanks in turnout. And then in North Carolina, Vance does a little bit better than Trump, and then AOC kind of drops a little bit from Harris. In Nevada, they both do about the same that the candidates did there, like just about the same. Vance gets a little bit more votes. AOC gets a little bit more votes than Harris did in the state. But again, the state kind of shifts a point to the right. Wisconsin, the turnout's really high there, but Vance pulls it off. Same thing in Michigan and in Pennsylvania. Vance improves in all of these states. I believe the one he actually improves in the most is actually Pennsylvania out of the three. And then when you look at the lean Democrat states, that puts, Minnesota, Virginia, New Jersey, Nebraska second, and now Maine drops right below the 6-point column in this one. So they don't quite flip, and they're not really in the position to, because of some young voters kind of shifting to the right, to the left in some cases. But again, they do end up all getting closer from 24. And then the one state that is left is New Hampshire. And it's only about a point win for AOC. She does like a little bit worse than Harris there, but it is not quite ready to flip as of right now. And that gives Vance 312 electoral college votes to AOC's 226 electoral college votes. If you guys did enjoy this video, make sure to hit the like button and to subscribe if you want more content just like this. And I will see you guys in the next video.